Good day, everyone. This is the Tax Platform informing the nation on tax matters. We'd like to apologize for giving you this week's episode very late. We had planned to give you visuals for this week, but unfortunately that plan did not materialize. However, we continue, and as promised, this week's episode is on transfer duty. Our transfer duty is basically a tax chargeable on immovable property. So if you are selling land, you are selling a house, this duty will be applicable on those who are buying. So it's charged on buyers of property or transferers of property. I should correct that. It's not only for buyers but transferers of property, because it applies to inheritance, applies to donations and all the like. Now, there were amendments that were made in 2019, 2020 thereabout, influenced much by the land policy. And one of those was transfer duty was now applicable on tribal land. Initially it was only on state and freehold lands. And when you talk of tribal land, it included grants, leases, and concessions. So it means farmers in Pandamatenga, farmers in Borolo, tourists or tourism businesses in Chobe and Okavango area were affected by these changes, and they now had to pay transfer duty every time they renew their leases, either with the land board or with the Department of Lands. Another change that was introduced was increase of the rate for non-citizens to 30%, from 5%. You understand that the 30% only applied on agricultural land, but it was since extended to other types of lands. And initially exemptions were automatic. If we exempted from transfer duty, it was automatic and you need not apply for them. But in 2020, it was changed that if you qualify for exemption, you apply for that exemption, and it may or may not be granted by the Commissioner General depending on their reasoning. Initially also, duty was payable on the purchase price. That means if you've bought something for 300,000, duty will be payable on that amount. But this was also changed to be paid now on the market value of the land or of the property, and that means you needed a valuation report, and that valuation report should be made by a professional qualified valuer. Also, duty was collected by the Registrar of Deeds, and it was moved to BES, simply because BES specializes in collecting taxes. And then the reasoning was that those who are good at collecting should focus on collecting, and the register should just focus on land issues. And initially also, when you transferred shares in a company that is predominantly property, you are only charged duty if that property was situated in agricultural land. But there was a change, and now regardless of where the transfer was, whether it's non-agricultural land or agricultural land, if you transfer shares in a company that is predominantly property, you are charged duty. So the transfer of shares is deemed as that transfer of that property. Initially, first-time homeowners were subject to duty, but after those amendments, they were now exempt from duty. Same applies to the less privileged donees who would receive donations, and also divorcees. They were initially subject to duty but are now exempt. And the last one, the first act was favorable to those married in community of property, and now since those amendments, the exemptions are enjoyed equally by all the marriage regimes. Now, the 30% rate, though it benefited citizens in some way, because now the property prices were going down because of the lack of appetite from non-citizens. On the other hand, it deterred non-citizens and deterred foreign direct investment because the 30% rate is very high, which was in fact double of the average rate in the SADC region and even in Africa. So yeah, that was one of the problems that it brought about. And even though it had achieved, its objective in terms of the land policy of reducing the amount of transactions for land between citizens and citizens, in terms of the trade policy, it was a trade barrier for non-citizens and for direct investment. And the issue of valuation certificates meant that more costs to transfer land or to buy land. So the cost of buying land went up, while in effect the changes were brought in to try to reduce those costs of buying land. And since including the tribal land in it means the volume of transactions dealt by BERS increased, because remember initially BERS only dealt with transactions in state and freehold, and they had to clear those transactions first. So now if you bring in tribal land in, it means the volume of the transactions increase and the work increases for them. Hence there were delays in the process of transfer because they had to deal with a lot of those transactions. And another issue was that the underprivileged, those who are inheriting IAS, it was a toll on them because they have to get those valuation certificates, and they also had to apply, meaning the process takes more time to transfer. Meaning it's a burden now to own land. So after considering all those, a bill now will be tabled before Parliament, and it was published about a week or two ago. So in this bill, it is proposed that all first-time allocations from tribal land will be exempt from duty. It's either commercial land, industrial land, whatever form of land that will be transferred to you on tribal land, it will be exempt from tax. And the 30% rate for non-citizens has now been revised to 10% for transactions that are less than 2 million and 15% for transactions that are over 2 million. So the rate will now be threshold based. And when it comes to the issue of applying for exemptions, the exemptions, most of them will become automatic, and you don't need to go to BERS to apply for them and fill a declaration form. But when it comes to the 1 million Pula exemption, the partitioning of plots where they are joint owners, when you are dealing with property transfer in issues of insolvency, or if you've been given a waiver by a minister, or you are transferring a plot from yourself to your company or from your company to yourself, and you are dealing with issues of donations, those ones will still have to apply for exemptions. But I think there was an oversight, that's my personal view, in not giving automatic qualification or exemption for those receiving donations, because just from an ordinary view is that if you're giving someone a donation, is that they can't afford what you are giving them, and having them apply for these exemptions and getting valuation certificates and all that brings more burden to them. So I think it's something that will be looked into when the bill is finally debated in Parliament. And of course, you won't need a valuation report if you are selling or you are buying land or property in a tribal land area, BERS will be able to use values that are provided by the council to determine whether you should be chargeable to transfer duty or not, especially when it comes to the 1 million pula threshold. Also, for non-citizens, if they were buying property that is subject to VAT, they would have to pay VAT and pay the excess of 16%, which is now 18%. But going forward now, it is proposed that once they paid VAT, the excess will be waived. So the VAT will be sufficient and you won't need to pay extra duty. So you just need to show the registrar that you have paid VAT, whether 12% or 14%, and then they can effect the transfer. Apart from the issue of donations, generally I think the proposed items are fair, and everyone will be happy about those. So yes, those are the changes that are proposed by the minister in terms of the Transfer Duty Act, and hopefully you are happy in relation to the issue of you not needing to submit valuation reports anymore. But those who are buying from freehold land might say, where is equity in that? Because in tax we always talk about the issue of equitable taxes. So they might say, we also want to be exempt from the need to come up with valuation reports if you are in freehold land or state land. But yes, I guess there's a reason why they excluded freehold land. Maybe it's also because the market value is not necessarily always available at council or at land board level, because those are personal properties. So that's why maybe you continue to need valuation certificates when it comes to your freehold land. Right, I hope that was insightful. Remember, we are available across all your favorite podcast platforms. We are on Spotify, we are on Apple Podcast, we are on Google Podcast, and all those other platforms. Good day.